in the coveted 430 spot here. So we're going to try to make sure that this is we get into the most important stuff, which are the nuts and bolts of sponsorship and how decisions are made, how expectations are around that. Before we do that, we've assembled, I think, an incredible panel here. We've got a team owner, we've got a tournament operator, we've got one of the largest advertising agency conglomerates who also has made major investments in esports, and we have two significant sponsors of esports. So I think between the six of us, we pretty much cover the entire ecosystem. And so I think it's going to be a really great conversation. So I think we have a good sense of Eric, what you do. Yep. I'd love to just, Nicole, starting with you, if you can just introduce what Evil Genius is all about, and then maybe just go down the panel, just a brief introduction, who you are, where you work, what your role is.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Nicole LaPointe Jameson, and I am the current CEO of Evil Geniuses, which is an esports team based out of Seattle, in the United States, but we have significant both fan reach as well as sponsor representation in the APAC region. So thank you for having me.
Oh, hello. Okay, my name is Yoshi Nakano I'm based in Tokyo, Dentsu, the advertising agency network globally. I'm based in Tokyo, do a lot of esports job in Japan, but I have a global mission as well to expand esports business as an agency. So I like to learn and to be more support in this industry. Thank you.
My name is Akshat. I'm the founder and managing director of Nodwin Gaming. We are India's largest esports firm by far. Partnered with ESL, DreamHack, and a couple of other cool companies. And we run about 4,000 hours and 400 days of esports in India.
Yeah. Samir?
Nice. Hi, my name is Samir Tupaki. I lead up gaming and esports for Intel's Asia and Japan business. Part of the portfolio, we bring Intel Extreme Masters, ESL One. We build a host of IPs for Asia, Southeast Asia. And we recently announced Intel World Open. That's going to be part of the Olympics and bringing Rocket League, Street Fighter to the rest of Southeast Asia, and a couple of broader markets.
Cool. I think most people think of South Korea as the home of esports, and China has obviously just exploded of late. But we have some interesting people around Southeast Asia, Japan, India on stage. I think, let's just turn to Japan for a second. Yoshi, Dentsu's made some very significant capital investments in the space. You're both an investor and an advertiser. Could you just maybe share a little bit with the group of sort of what Dentsu's up to in esports?
Okay, in Japan there are two aspects, I think. Well, esports in Japan is quite behind from all the rest of the world. I mean, we have a lot of gaming publishers. A lot of people play games. 40 million people play games. But the culture of gaming in Japan has been developed like single person playing in their own room, just like by themselves, while the global esport is like more of a communication fight, team versus team. So esports evolution is quite low, I mean, in Japan, still beginning. That's one thing. And me as an advertising agency, we are threatened to change. Advertising market is drastically changing. Like, agency will probably lose a place if we need to change, right? So I need to make our own investment too. So those two combined, we are putting our own money into developing or like digging a hole or creating new market space in Japan for esports, where brands and content holders can come in. So for example, I make investment into high school championship. So we spend our own money to organize the event and recoup by collecting income, sponsorship money. And also, let's say TV. TV is the traditional media, probably now, for esports. But we spend money to make a TV program specifically for esports, to spread the culture in Japan. Also, maybe a national federation business is not so popular outside of Japan, but we also invest into this relationship with Japan Esports Union, so we can make a sponsorship package to support the Team Japan of esports. A thing like that is like creates a good, easy story for non-endemic sponsors to join in. But anyways, that's what I do.
That's, I think, really nicely dovetails to Samir. Intel recently announced a significant investment in Japan around the Olympics. Can you talk a little bit about what that is all about?
Sure. So we called it as the Intel World Open. So part of the thing that we've been doing with, let's say, Intel Extreme Masters in ESL 1 is right at the top of the pyramid. It's only for the pros, right? And the entire season and the 3-year sponsorship that we have with ESL brings all of the pros together. The idea of coming with Intel World Open was bringing up for every Joe and every pro to go and support it at a country level. And if you look at the titles that we have chosen, it's Street Fighter and Rocket League. So Street Fighter goes back to Japan, heart of gaming, it lends itself very well. And Rocket League, it's football with a little bit of physics, and it's a fun car racing game, and that leads up very well. So the idea is, as part of the Olympics, the idea is to open it up, make sure that any Joe who is interested in competing the space, it brings it. Now, when you dial back and when you think about it from an esports perspective, it's a step forward, right? It legitimizes itself to the next couple of years, good recognition from the industry, and I think it's a good way forward for us across.
Do you have global ambitions beyond Japan with that investment?
It is. It cuts across the world. You'll see activations happening in Southeast Asia, in India, and some of the other key markets. And we're just trying to figure out what that whole sponsorship looks like.
So let's turn our attention to India. So I think India is kind of, relatively speaking, a newer entrant to the esports space. Where is esports in India?
Last month, 197 million people played esports in India. It's not traditional. It's not something that most people would have standard conversations around. India's mobile esports. Out of those 197 million people, 125 million people played PUBG Mobile. 37 million people played cricket. And these are very deep, entrenched socio-cultural things that work in India that doesn't work in any other part of the world. And because of that, we have very natural partners. For example, the home of PUBG Mobile is not Twitch because that's not in India yet, but it is YouTube. And that's where everyone sits. But that doesn't mean that other distribution platforms are left behind. So Facebook Gaming, for good or bad, is the home of Crossfire, right? And that's where we are seeing influencers and other partners becoming big. It's started off being English, but 72% of gaming consumption, not esports, gaming consumption is in natural Indian languages. We have 14 languages that are fairly large. So most of that content is being created and consumed on Instagram and even on WhatsApp. There's apps like TikTok that do extremely well on gaming in India. So we've kind of charted our own path. 200 million gamers is nothing. 250 million gamers is nothing to sneeze at. But it's been very. If esports and gaming are subculture to the world of pop culture, then India's done something on its own in its own path. But yeah, 250 million people.
So I think maybe if we have time, we'll come back to mobile gaming. I think it's a really interesting topic. Nicole, Evil Geniuses are, unlike the rest of the folks on the stage, is kind of a borderless concept. Can you just tell us a little bit about the team and where you guys are?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm new to Evil Geniuses. I've been with them for about 3 months now. And when I came on, it was important to me to identify our fans and really do a discovery into where our fan stratification occurs globally. And what's interesting is Evil Geniuses brands itself as a North American team. But if you look at our sponsorship, which is 50% APAC headquartered, most notably Razer and FVBet, as well as our most watched countries in terms of YouTube minutes or our Twitter followers, the Philippines and India are oftentimes at par with the US or other North American countries. So it was very interesting considering that we candidly haven't done any targeted market or experiential activations with the space, yet we have such strong brand lift. So that's been something we've been looking into, continuing to activate and iterate on to really reach that community of fans that we've had truly organically.
So I want to make sure that we dedicate enough time to actually talking about investment and programs and sponsorships. I think, Samir, you have the distinction of probably having the most high-profile large investment in the history of esports, at least that I know of. You guys announced a $100 million partnership with ESL. which is obviously a very significant investment for the company. I'd just love to hear about sort of how that came about, what you guys are trying to accomplish, and sort of what the components of it are, and obviously feel free to chime in from the ESL perspective.
Sure. So if you look at Intel, at the heart of it, we are an endemic technology brand, right? It matters to us in terms of the technology that we bring to the masses. Now, take Intel Extreme Masters. It's 15 years in the running. It's one of the oldest IPs that we jointly own with ESL. It's good that he is here and he can kind of back it up. The idea behind the 3-year deal was, one, obviously the math. If you look at data, the esports sponsorship is going at a CAGR of about 35%. Now the component of prize money is going up by 50%. So one of the things that we wanted to do early on is work with ESL to kind of lock it in, because we don't know what the valuations are going to look like in the next 2 years. Now, if you dial it back and what it means to us in APJ, or Asia Pacific and Japan, is we can go back and tell the community that we will bring a AAA title in Sydney every year. So you almost have a roster of predictable community activations, and that's good not only for us, but it's also good for the community to just have a full roster of activations. And then we go in and we have a full execution of influencers, sales activations, esports, and we touch almost all aspects of esports, and that gives us predictability.
So yeah, so it makes so much sense for you and your product line, because high-performance gaming machines rely on Intel technology, and for you to draw the linkage that the best gamers in the world are relying on Intel technology is going to help you sell more Intel product to the millions and millions of people that watch. I'm curious, from Nike's perspective, is this about selling shoes and apparel, or is this like one step removed from that?
Hey, that's a great question. We get that question quite a bit. For us, if it was just about physical products and putting our logo on it, I mean, it would just be another part of our activation, our sponsorship world. For us, like I said before, our mission is really about getting a new generation of kids to move, right? We're the most impactful and most dynamic when we take cultural phenomenons that are happening, one in sport boom in China, incredible growth in running, training, all sorts of sport activity, and then there's explosion of gaming culture, right, and gamers. And when we take these two things together and we mix them together and put a spin on it and make sure that the kid and the youth culture loves it, that creates something amazing for all of us, right? I think that is the kind of the zone we would love to do. We all know right now around the world we face a challenge with kids not moving and therefore not living healthy lives. We don't want them to stop gaming. We want them to continue to do what drives their passion, but along the way, if we can get them to move, get them to live healthier, and therefore they can do whatever they want to do longer, that's the mission. And that's the zone we want to be in. It's not just about product. Of course, product, I think, for us, listening to the community, really figuring out what are their problems that we want to solve, both on a physical side as well as on a digital side. Could be training programs, training regiments, as well as physical product to enable them. Like, that's another zone that we would love to explore.
So this is interesting. So we've got two very prominent marketers that are using esports very tactically. I'm curious as to how you think about the assets that you get with this investment and how you value them. Esports investment can include naming rights. It can include the access to IP and marks, and it can include media inventory on Twitch or elsewhere. It can include media inventory on television. It can include access to talent. Where do you assign the value? To $100 million, I don't know that you got, did you announce how much you spent on this League of Legends partnership?
It was a significant deal.
You can tell us how much it was. Anyhow, significant investment. Do you line item it? Like, how much money do you put against the IP? How much money do you put against the media inventory? Like, how do you think about the assets themselves?
I think it's part of the KPI that we do know about in terms of growth, in terms of the markets that we hit. Now, for Intel, we know markets where we sell really high PCs, and those are the markets that we want to go into. Now, it's a combination of those factors. It is basic math. You do line them up. You've got qualifiers, you've got semifinals, you've got finales, you've got stadium events, right? Then how many people can you get packed up? You multiply that over 3 years and you look at the growth. Now, the biggest part of this, as an industry, data is coming in, but yes, it's still a fair amount of journey that we need to make. But I think the fact that we can hit 15, 20 unique million coming out of Sydney, that's considerable because we can then go tell the technology story. Now, when you dial that back, those eyeballs through one event means something. Now, yes, we could take that money and sponsor that somewhere else, but the idea is because we're so ingrained in gaming, it makes sense for us to value it, right? And then we go figure out what else we can go do in terms of next steps. Yep. I think that's where the math and the finance pretty much comes in.
Very interesting. Someone actually mentioned that there is no playbook for esports sponsorships. Actually, I absolutely disagree. It's like having a deconstructed hot dog. You know the maths, you know the components. Each one of them are valued, and you'll have slight deltas on each one of them. So one of our biggest partners besides Intel in India is Mountain Dew, and we go to about 246 cities in our country where we activate over 400 man days in a year, 7 trucks that go to every part of India, and between 2,000 and 5,000 people per truck come and look at an activity, and about 300 people play that. And out of those 300 people, we choose one person, 250 people come to the national finals, and those 250, one of those kids gets on a bottle of Mountain Dew. And that kid on Mountain Dew bottle runs a 10 million bottle run, where everyone now goes and says, that's my kid, that used to be Brad Pitt, right? And everyone reads about it. Now, when you run this entire ecosystem, just as an example, there is a cost per contact for an FMCG like Mountain Dew, which is an activation. There is a cost per contact on eyeballs that are there. There's a cost of contact per this. It's like a hoarding. And those are metrics that are fairly ubiquitous across the world where you can go ahead and say, I value all of that. Now, at the end of it, with a growth curve of 50% that you'd go ahead and it'll come to a number of X. The value you'll assign is because of that specific gaming 16, 12 to 25 male TG, is there a multiplier delta that you set? So a factor of 1.5 or 2. That's the science, or that's the variable which is there. Everything else is fairly Excel sheet.
Eric, how do you guys think about ROI?
Well, for us, again, right, I think there's definitely pieces of it where what I call strat math, right? We got to kind of model it out, and we do all the due diligence on that. But for us, I think it's more about the opportunity and the potential of what this brings, right? If we look at just League of Legends in China, anywhere from 30 to 50 million monthly actives, and of the age where the overlap with our core consumer right now, there is overlap, but there's more opportunity for that. The opportunity to engage that, it's hard to put an exact price on it, but when you think about getting one kid, 10 kids, a million kids, 10 million kids moving, I think that is the opportunity that we're looking at. So to put a valuation on it at the end of the day, you could, but it would be, it's you're forward thinking about. For us, it's less about the ROIs, but more about the, if we don't do this, then what, right? And then do you lose the opportunity to be a part of this new generation that's super into gaming and the culture of gaming, and how do we kind of propel that forward? I think that is where the ROI calculations for us, like we cannot miss that.
So we've talked about tournament operators with ESL. We've talked about partnering with a league with Riot Games. How's a team different? Like, why should a sponsor come to a team either as a supplement to these other investments or as a substitute for these other investments? What do you get when you sponsor a team?
Definitely. And I think there's some interesting functional differences that now occur because teams right now are very beholden to sponsors as a main or primary driver of revenue. So like for Evil Geniuses, for example, we actually have a whole in-house content production team in ARM because a lot of sponsorships look for metrics around eyeballs or influencers. It kind of feeds into why does an individual influencer or player join a team. There's some synergies, some opportunities at scale with having an organization backing you, where similarly similarly, a sponsor sees, okay, here's a cohort, a group of individuals that either compete at a high level or have a social following of a certain level or have the opportunity for product placement. A lot, as Eric mentioned, leans on the goals of the particular sponsor, but teams tend to provide some synergies there as well as they're able to functionally deliver on those.
Can I add to that? I think Nicole brings up an incredible point, where your partnerships, whether at the team level or at the player level, it's going to be really about authenticity, right? So what are you trying to do? So for us to partner with the team's got to believe that physical movement or training can enhance their gaming wins and results, right? Like they have to believe in that. We can't make them do it. If we make them do it, everyone out there on YouTube, on Weibo, will call us out for that because they know it's not real. So I think authenticity has got to be the first layer, and we think about partnerships. When we worked with going back up to the league, right? When we worked with the LPL, their vision to us is like they want to build the future of sport, both in the physical world and the digital world. Those are visions that overlap, and one of the big pieces of that is the authenticity to want to drive physical training and longevity for their players, right? So to completely agree with what Nicole's just said.
So Yoshi, I'm interested in the Japanese market. Yep. To the outsider, the fighting games are probably what are most well known. I'm curious what marketers are the most active in the Japanese market, and are you seeing them extend those investments outside of Japan, or are they primarily Japanese strategies?
You know, there are a lot of marketers that are interested in doing esports. I mean, it's proven by a number of contacts coming to my division from account executives to just go to explain to the clients what esport is. So I go there and explain, but it's hard to get the actual money or account. Well, the problem that I think there needs to be a story, especially for non-endemic sponsors. Especially in Japan, esports, nobody knows. So there needs to be a story. But like if you think about it, esports has so much story that's beautiful. I mean, friendship, it's about friendship, or like pure joy, sharing. It's like one of the most peaceful, most international, most purely enjoyable area. And especially now, it's a timing that like all these adults are just joining in to talk about esports. That's so much attention to it. And more than that, I guess there are unleashed passions that are just rising in Japan. I mean, among the fans and too. You know, they're just being acknowledged. So a lot of the stories that we can carry on, maybe like we can focus on the kids, like high school kids that just want to prove to the parents that they're just doing it not just for the play, but for seriously, you know? Thing like that, those story like that, it's something that we as advertising agency needs to capture and bring it to the brand's message and bridge it. So, I don't know, like a high school championship that was done in Japan was sort of a good case for me. I mean, a high school kids to chase the dream with their friends, and parents is cheering. I mean, that kind of whole scene was just a good story to convey in Japan, just because maybe Japan is the initial stage. But like those stories, I think we need to find, I guess, in Japan. Yeah.
So let's shift gears and talk about actual specific activations. I think Akshat, you guys are a tournament operator. You guys have lots of different clients from lots of different genres. What are some of your favorite activations that you've done with clients, or that you've seen other parts of ESL and other parts of the world do with clients that you're most proud of?
We got Red Bull to go ahead and invest into shooting games. They never did it, ever. In Turkey, one of our compatriots went and tried something called 2v2 Flip. It's actually a custom mode built with Red Bull. And Red Bull's a great example, right? It's a fairly innovative company out there that is open to new ideas, but always wants something different. They'll never go ahead and do traditional sports. They'll do sports, cliff jumping. They'll do jump from the sky and try to get a great PR value out of it. And we've been able to go ahead and work with them on a couple of modes. One, this is a personal favorite of mine. there's a lot of psychology around designing what you design in esports formats. And everyone uses this word IP fairly loosely, but figuring out something that will monetize on a long-term basis and is built to go and serve a specific need is extremely important to build an IP. So the difference between developed markets and developing markets in traditional sports is that developed markets find it easier to go and have an infrastructure for sports. That's why you'll have developed markets doing really well in team-based sports. Developing markets, because they'll never have the money to go ahead and build infrastructure, they'll often have single individuals that will come out that are great. But how do you go ahead and build that with a game like, say, Dota? Dota needs it's a 5v5 game, and you need at least 2,000 hours or maybe 1,500 hours with other people who you've played with. It's like Barcelona knowing tiki-taka, right? So you got to know it, how to go ahead and play with your 4 other teammates. And you just can't put a dream team together and hope they will win. So in developing markets, we've built a format with Red Bull, which now runs in Ukraine, runs in Brazil, runs in India, will run in a couple of other countries. Started out of India, where we go nationwide and find individuals that are great center forwards, so mid-tier. We find the best mid player in the country. We don't try to go ahead and find a whole team. We just find the best mid player in the country. We build a custom map mode with Valve in it. We go ahead and run nationwide. We bring the champion here, and since Red Bull sponsors a very strong team, OG, they've won 2 TIs in a row, we then get this kid to go ahead and do a 1-month workshop with the OG. Right now, imagine this, and it's not just one kid, it's the 8 kids that get to the final, and hopefully they'll come back and start working with other teams to go ahead and build that out. So these are the kind of activations which we get really proud of, because to what Yoshi was saying, in developing markets, esports is synonymous with just one word: hope. It's not richness, and even being really rich is a hope, right? But what they want to go ahead and is, I want a world where I'm a nobody, but I can be somebody there. People will know me what I do this for. And that word hope is what esports is based out of.
How about on the team level? What's an activation that you guys are most proud of?
Yeah, definitely. So actually, just 2 weeks ago here in Singapore was the 30th Southeast Asian Games. We were really excited. We partnered with Razer, where esports was one of the competitions that was held, and we brought in our coach as well as our Dota team to both not only train the current country's teams as well as partner with them and give kind of advice, as well as meet and greet, in which again was very exciting because we don't brand ourselves as a Singaporean team or having strong connections there, but the fan turnout was amazing. The meet and greet was essentially sold out, and it was a really exciting opportunity because, similar to what Eric was saying earlier, the alignment of goals with ourselves and Razer as one of our sponsors in bringing esports into the global stage this was a perfect example of how we partner with our sponsors and bring that excitement that our players feel is authentic to our brand to really produce something fantastic and first in the world. So that was something we were really proud of.
So we talked earlier about mobile gaming and PUBG Mobile and a couple of the other titles have come up. How does this explosion of mobile gaming, it's obviously bringing all new audiences and new titles and new formats. How does it impact sponsors' ability to get involved? Anyone?
Well, the endemics are the first ones who need to go decide what they want to go to, right? It's Intel will come back and say, interesting, but we don't have a portfolio.
Not that interesting to Intel, right?
But we don't have a portfolio, right? Till 2 months ago they did, but now they don't. Same with Asus. Now, Asus is another one of our big partners. Asus is a great example to go ahead and say. Asus is the first company in the world in the space of endemic esports sponsors and tech sponsors that has a full stack. They always had a gaming monitor, they had a gaming laptop, they had a gaming desktop, but now they have a gaming phone. And it's the Asus ROG phone. In China, it's been launched with Tencent, but across the world, it's one of the most kick-ass phones you'll ever see. And they then have a components business, which is graphics cards and motherboards and routers and other components. So they then become supremely interested around going and saying, hey, it doesn't matter to us. This is actually the first time where the consumers, so one big step back. Earlier, the consumer of esports used to go ahead and to be in esports, you needed $1,500. right? That's the cost of a rig, of going and watching it, what. And suddenly with mobile gaming, that's come down to 200. So the same device the kid was actually getting onboarded on in this gaming ecosystem, whether he's watching Twitch or whether he's watching YouTube, is what he started playing on, is what he started creating content on, and what he started distributing content on, right? And this aha moment is suddenly like, hey, hang on, I can create content. I don't have to go ahead and now go on a big, like I don't need a rendering card and I don't need something big to go ahead and actually go do there. I can actually start there. Now, it's not as high quality as PC gaming or console gaming, for sure. But it allowed a huge new mass of people which were not getting into gaming to get onto gaming.
I mean, I think it's amazing, right? To kind of hear all the thoughts here. For us, like, if we think about being untethered to a stationary desk, right? Now it takes you into the world. The opportunities for exploration, for movement, for augment, and honestly, like, we're learning about what are the possibilities are. But that's the vision, right? If the kid or the consumer can game and also move at the same time, it brings up a whole new world for our consumers to explore. We're really kind of erasing that line that exists between the physical world and the digital world, and that's kind of the holy grail that we're all looking for. So not only does it bring in more people, it makes it more accessible, but it actually allows them to do much more than just sit in front of a desk and game.
Right, so I have two questions about kind of sizing the market. You hear these crazy numbers about how big this is. Just geographically, well over half of the viewership comes from this region, Asia Pacific, and way, way, way less than half of brand investment in esports comes from this region. Is that realistically going to ever close, and what will it take for that to happen?
Yoshi?
I think that's the right guy to answer.
I think that's your question.
Depends on him, I guess. Depends on you guys. But yeah, I think, well, we as advertising agency guys, I think, I don't know, I still haven't found an answer, and I'm here to learn. But I need to be able to explain more about the beauty of esports to the brands that are not interested in esports yet. You know, and let's say a company like Toyota or Honda, Nissan, they're already sponsoring esports in North America. But if I go to the headquarters in Tokyo, say Toyota, they're just so, well, I can't say anything bad, but just like, they just,
Set in their ways.
Esports is not yet. I mean, and it's, I don't know, it's, anyways. So, Western, it's just I need to have more of a capability to explain. I mean, quantitatively too, like how to move people, like how many, I don't know, shoes you can sell. I don't think that's the right way, but like even like qualitative way too, you know. That's the way I think we need to be more equipped.
I'll ask a reverse question. Consumer marketing has always been the bastion of America, right? How much sponsorship, not just here, sports, is actually based out of Asia?
That was my next question, actually. Well, let's jump to that question. So the point you're bringing up is all of the audience numbers around esports have it as big or bigger than most traditional sports. Is there realistically a scenario that this, I mean, Nike's the perfect person to ask, is there realistically a scenario that this could be at parity with traditional sports in terms of investment?
Well, hey, I think again, I think sponsorship. It's all dedicated by the consumer, right? As the consumer continues to drive and demand for more events and more engagement and different types of involvement from brands, leagues, teams, players, right? Like, it will create a brand new ecosystem. We really don't try not to see the difference between, oh, this is traditional sports sponsorship and this is gaming or esports sponsorship. We just see it as like, hey, we're just enabling all these folks that are into it to go get after their passions, right? So I think that's the way we're looking at it. If one day it approaches or eclipses, fine. just like traditional sports are continuing to evolve. And the thing that we're looking at that is really interesting is that now traditional, quote unquote, traditional sports, and then now this new esport, they're starting to learn from each other. How do you tell stories? How do you elevate the players? How do you create content? And then at the same time, traditional sports companies looking at gaming viewing angles or perspectives and incorporating that into the game to really kind of create this world where it's not about a separation of traditional versus gaming. It's about just this is content and this is incredible entertainment for the consumer. Like, I think that's the question we should really kind of think about. How do we create a place where all the boats lift up and win?
I think an interesting add-on there as well is the demographic of the current consumer that esports has just in their foothold. It's really Gen Z, right? It's the generation of technology adopters that tend to be first movers, more ubiquitous with using different platforms and exploring different mediums for content consumption, while traditional sports viewers are aging up. This is really like esports just naturally has eyeballs with people who are current or the next big spenders in the market. So I think when you ask questions like, oh, will this become like traditional sports? I think it's natural to consider the fact that this is where the technology and people are moving.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. Okay, I'd like to go down the line, starting with Samir. I'd like you to tell us what the single best advertising or sponsorship program, either in gaming or in esports, that you've seen that you and your company had nothing to do with? Something that you totally admired that somebody else did?
So, not Asia and Japan, but my colleague in China runs something called as IMC. It's a local IP that they've created for the China market. And we're just amazed in terms of how the whole China ecosystem comes together. Now, if you break it down, you can see traditional sports like football and how you break it down all the way from training facilities in colleges, because you can do that every day, and then you can slowly level up. You've got collegiate, you level up, you can kind of do state level, and then you get into the pros. Now, there is elements of sponsorship, there's elements with they getting scholarships, there's element with team houses. The way they've constructed that IP, I think it's pretty significant in terms of the story Intel is able to tell in China, right? If we can create something like that in Southeast Asia, that would be a great way for Intel to go tell the technology story.
So Akshat, we got to turn this into a speed round, unfortunately, but let's make sure we get through this.
Gym membership. Gold's Gym equivalent in India went and taught people who would never go ahead and be in esports the value of actually coming out, and they went and said, if you want to go ahead and practice gaming, APM, multitasking there, the best place to actually go ahead and do this is in a gym with a trainer.
Cool.
Well, I like the campaign that support the culture of esports to be more forward. Like, so, I don't know, a lot of things on Twitch too. But FaZe Clan champion. I think that's the collaboration of the product. I think it's like it creates the new culture of gamer. In the same time, branding. So I think it's good.
On the team side, I don't think I ever got as many sad and jealous emails from our player when Team Liquid's Marvel partnership was announced.
We were involved in that.
Yes, I know.
The one that comes out in my mind was it's a company it's called Hyper Ice. I don't know if you guys know it. It's like recovery. It's a vibrating roller recovery apparatus for elite level athletes. They showcased and they went out and sponsored esports teams. I think it's one in LA and San Francisco. And they showcased Juju Smith-Schuster, your prototypical 6'5" NFL wide receiver, right? And his other passion, other than playing football, is the game. 6 hours, 8 hours a day. And they just showed him it live, coming back from NFL football practice, getting on the console, using Hyper Ice to kind of relax his muscles, both from gaming and also taking hits in American football, and just talking about how they don't see it. He doesn't see it as two things. These are just two passions of his, and this product helps him do both. That, for me, was the click.
I just want to thank all of you guys for being so generous. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. Great panel. Thank you.
Thanks.